Okay, Mauresh, Joshi is with us as well. Mauresh, there is a lot of flavor in the oil and gas space, particularly the mid-rung oil and gas companies. So Chennai Petro is active, MRPL is active, Petronet LNG is active. You have any under your coverage? Have you given calls on any of these as a result of which they are moving today?
Afternoon, Neeraj. No, I think no direct coverage on these stocks per se, but largely again I think if you see the movement of crude and the kind of margins generally the oil companies are posting, I think robust margins have been posted, and even if you remove the one-time inventory gains that these companies had in the quarter gone by, I think the expectations are that if crude remains in that range of 55 to 60 and with cracks and spreads expected to remain as they are, the margins, specifically the GRMs, should sustain going forward. So I think it is that logic which is probably abetting the kind of rallies that we are seeing in the stock. But largely I think within the space, OMCs is something that I've liked in the past, and my entire belief is that the large part of delta in terms of crude prices moving down has been captured in the balance sheet with lesser working capital debt going down. The marketing margins have shown improvement as well, both on the diesel and the petrol front, and are expected to do so over the next couple of years as well. With new capacities, with greater complexities coming through, the GRM should sustain for the larger OMC players. So my entire take is that if you leave aside the comment in terms of how the behemoth will be created for the oil and gas space, OMCs probably still have the earnings parameter in terms of marketing margins moving for them. And again, I think the marketing margins to refining ratios relatively higher. So I think if you do an SOTP valuation for all these stocks, investments form an integral part, refining forms an integral part, marketing forms an integral part. For IOC, I think two more lines get added. I think the annuity business and the petchem business. So largely, I think valuations probably have moved up significantly with prices moving up. But again, I think there is scope for earnings to improve. Specifically, I think in the case of IOC, with the Paradip refinery with a 15 MTP expected to get commissioned at 100% level in FY18, with a complexity index of 13, there is every chance that the marketing margins will further move up on an EV/EBITDA basis. So I think I remain constructive on the OMC pack as well.
Okay, Mauresh, we were just discussing this point a little while back, and only from the standpoint of it being a value play, if at all. J&K Bank is in a troubled cycle, but they're trying to offload their NPAs into a joint venture with the J&K government, using authorized capital of about 100 crores, doing something like an asset recast company. If that's this kind of development that they're following, would that bring about value in J&K as a stock, J&K Bank as a stock? Because it's not gone anywhere and there's a lot of pain on the balance sheet. But if that's taken away, would that create value?
So afternoon, again, not really sure on how this thing is going to work and move. But again, I think instead of taking bets where the asset quality pressure still persists on the balance sheet, my own sense is that where a lot of pain has already happened in terms of recognition of bad assets, in terms of both provisioning and upfront recognition proactively by a lot of corporate-facing retail private sector banks like an ICICI and Axis, I think there is every scope of earnings improvement happening on the larger cap banks, and this is again to do with the kind of credit cost increase or elevation that we've seen because of these issues. Again, I think credit growth expected to pick up from the higher single digits as working capital constraints start going down for end user industries. That will have a significant amount of say in terms of these banks which have good capital adequacy ratios, good branch networks, and that leverage obviously plays on their balance sheet. So in my opinion, I think Q4 will be one of the quarters or the last quarters where the pain would get recognized on the balance sheet, and you'll see gradual improvement happening thereof. So again, I think the private corporate facing ones is something where I believe that earnings recovery can come through from the first half of FY18.
Well, what else is moving around? I'm just trying to figure out before we thank Sandeep Sabharwal to ask him a couple of other questions on active names. By the way, Chennai Petro is on a roll, yes, and we've spoken about that. As is Engineers India. GMR Infra has some upticks to itself, I think 2.5%. So that's not done too badly, 14.5 or thereabouts. So There are a few stocks, and of course the JP Group continues to rise and shine. You know, these days a lot of these two single digit or two digit names are just having a phenomenal up. 15 rupees for JP Associates, up 10%. We've discussed this. There's a lot of murmuring, market chatter, if you will, of some bit of reorganization, restructuring coming in the JP Group. Let's see if that happens, and let's see if that has the wherewithal to take the stock higher from where they are right now. Sun Pharma is up another 4%, 674. HDFC Bank is doing okay. And I want to talk about one mid-cap name, which is Viatech Wabag. Will come up on your screen as well. I think enough and more traction on that name too. You know, Sandeep, just wondering, this whole space, I mean, you know, agri-related multiple things in irrigation. Yesterday we were speaking to Finolex Industries, and they have done some interesting tie-ups on the non-agri side as well. I know you like Jain Irrigation the most, but is there anything else that has caught your fancy of late?
So I think all these companies are doing well, and like Finolex also is doing pretty well. And among the agrochemical companies, obviously UPL is something which we hold, and that company continues to do well. And I think that they should do pretty well going forward. So X of that, not really sure on how we can play the theme as a standalone entity.
TVS Motors is at a life high today. Do you have I mean, how do you read into the stock trading at life high? Is it time to book out, or do you think that that's one segment which is still got to do a lot of catch up?
I think TVS has looked expensive to me for a long time, but the stock keeps on performing. So we were discussing in the morning also that I actually never bought. And so the valuation require the company to actually perform very well and actually deliver on the margin uptick which they have been talking about for several years, but not yet achieved. So I think that's something we will have to see. So I wouldn't be a buyer for sure at this price. For those who are holding, I think they need to take a call, but given that the overall market view is constructive, they could wait out for some time. Otherwise, shifting out from TVS to some other stock might be a better idea.
Okay, Sandeep, we'll let you go at that. Thanks so much for taking the time out and joining us and giving us that perspective. But we are talking about agri names and Viatech Wabag in particular. In fact, that is also the stock of the day. We also have to talk to CK Narayan about the chart of the day, but first get in Pranay Jain to talk about Viatech Wabag and why is it that it is the stock of the day. Pranay?
Well, after its 5% rally today, it's actually the best performer from the capital goods pack, and it's also taken it to the highest level in the last 3 months. This stock generally does not move much, but after strong Q3 results, where its top line grew about 17% and EBITDA was a robust 79%. Actually, also if you adjust for the liquidation charges at its Oman desalination GV, then it's posted very strong profitable numbers as well. But some other positives which are fueling this rally and which makes it the stock of the day is that management has assured investors that after a patch of sluggish execution at some of their overseas projects, all of them have now come back on track and are seeing faster execution. In fact, they've also said that traction is very strong in some of their emerging markets where things had lagged back, such as Latin America as well as Southeast Asia and Middle East. But with oil prices now firming up around $55 per barrel at Brent, this too has picked up very good pace. Order intake was strong at about 1200 crore this quarter, taking the 9-month order wins at about 2700 crore, and with that they have an order backlog of about 8400 crores approximately. But what is really heartening to know is that they have about 20,000 crore worth of projects in the pipeline, and they are favorable to win quite a big chunk of that. In fact, 18,000 of worth of projects are coming up in the next few quarters, and this is across the mega waste water treatment. For example, 8,500 crore in Mumbai. Then you have another Chennai desalination plant coming up worth about 5,000 crore rupees, and such kind of water treatment, Ganga treatment projects for which the tenders have already started going out. So 2 of them, they are favorites to win out of the 4 over here, and therefore all of this is bringing up optimism in the stock. As we speak, it's crossed the 100-day moving average, and the volumes are the highest in the last 11 months, nearly 4.5 times that of the last 5-day average.
Thanks, Pranay. Thanks very much for taking us through the stock story of the day. 5% higher at 518. Okay, that's of course one stock done. Dr. Naran, now let's talk about your chart of the day as well.
Well, I was looking at Bharat Finance and the way the stock has been overcoming all the resistances that were placed in front of it, whether it's in the form of prior swing highs, retracement levels, previous gap areas, etc., moving down to test supports and holding them. Everything seems to be, working rather positively for Bharat Finance right now. And if it were to move ahead from here, then we are certainly looking at a new high. Now, whether it's of value or not, or whether it is a little overvalued, or all those things can be debatable. But then the fact of the matter is that the market is willing to pay more and more for this particular stock, and the whole of the financial services area also seems to be on the move. Bajaj Finance is, revving up. L&T has been up and about strongly, etc. So I think Bharat Finance can give you a little more on the upside, 905, 910 at the moment. So it could be a swing trade buy at the current level.
Okay, that's a quick word in on Bharat Financial, 4% high. It's one of the stock stories of the day. But what's also catching my attention, we've spoken about this earlier as well, is Reliance Capital up 6%. Mauresh, what's the call? Because a whole host of Anlambani group of companies are active today. Reliance Infra also up about 2%.
Now again, largely, Tanveer, within this space itself, Reliance Capital within the ADAG stocks can perform relatively better because of the inherent strength of the asset book that it carries, both in terms of the mutual fund business and the insurance business. Again, huge potential out there. So I think that is one stock that can probably do well within the ADAG group.
Right. Ashish, a quick call on Reliance Capital on the charts?
So looks quite positive. I think today we have seen a huge short covering in the stock, and that's the reason we are witnessing a clear reduction in the open interest. And I think maybe for a day or two it might see some kind of profit booking, but now I think on downside 500 becomes a very, very important support for the stock, and eventually I think the stock is ready for a move towards 550 odd zone. So I think any dip towards 505, 507 would be a good opportunity to re-enter long positions in the stock.
Okay, that's a quick word in on Reliance Capital. I just want to mark some of the other key movers in the session. Petronet LNG is higher by 3%. Divi's Labs has picked up momentum. LIC Housing Finance is up about 1.5%. And then, of course, you can also see how UPL is higher by about 1.5% too. HPCL active in the session as well. So a lot of these active liquid names have seen momentum. From the housing finance space, Mauresh, what's the call? What's the pecking order? Which are the top 3 names that you are recommending to clients?
So again, I think HFC is a space that I remain optimistic about. I've always been, and largely at this point of time, LIC Housing is something that we continue to like. Canfin Homes, I think there has been a strong growth trajectory on that front. The loan book has actually grown 42% over the past few years. Our own expectations is a 25-26% loan growth over the next 2 to 3 years. Management is very, very hopeful of an AUM around 35,000 odd crores. GNPAs are 0.24% with 100% provision. There are no net NPAs onto their books. The capital adequacy is extremely strong at 18.76. The cost of funds have come down quite drastically to 8.32%. And though valuations have been on the higher side, I think looking at the pedigree in terms of how asset quality has got maintained, Canfin Homes remains one of our preferred bets. Divan Housing is something that we liked from lower levels. Seasoned and granular loan book, you've seen a growth of almost 18-19%. Our own sense is 21% loan growth, 20 to 23% earnings growth. The stock has moved up significantly over the past few days. So again, I think LIC and Canfin is something that can still be looked at declines. DHFL, at least at this point of time, becomes a hold within the HFC space.
Chennai Petro moves up higher, I think, or maybe my eyes are playing tricks. No, it actually hasn't. It's come off a little bit from the levels, just a bit of a cool off. What's done well though? JP Infratech is up 15%, JP Associates is up 11%, JP Power is up 10%. No smoke without fire. Maybe something is happening, but you've got to know about it. Otherwise, you might well be the last entrant into the deal, and that might actually not augur too well. So be careful if you're trading this group. What's arguably been the mid cap or the not mid cap really, but the non-index large cap stock of the week has to be Cadila Healthcare, up 4.5% again today after the 22% up move yesterday, and with reason Cadila Healthcare has done what it has done. Should somebody carry home the long position, CK, into a Cadila Healthcare?
Yes, I would certainly do that. Stock has been steady today. It had a run to about something like 460 earlier, cooled off a bit as weekly traders or day traders took some profits off, but then hardly any price damage. A stock adding 25-28% in a matter of just a session or two, and meeting with no selling whatsoever is clearly indicative of the absence of any built-up long position, and the fact that whoever has bought in is not so anxious to kind of book out of this stock. So I think if you are holding long in this stock, one should definitely carry it forward for Monday.
Okay, by the way, let's just before we go to dealers, I just want to mark the top losers on the NSE include a NBCC, which still is down about 10%. UB Holdings continues to slide today, a slide over the last few days, and Mahanagar Gas I think goes ex-dividend or something like that, and that too is down about 4.5%. But dealers, and what are they suggesting in trade? Darshan and Yatin join in with their channel checks. Chairman, good afternoon both of you, thanks for joining in. The tick of blue here, Darshan has a blue shirt, I have a blue jacket and a white shirt. Yatin has a white shirt and a blue tie, so it's all just a lot of blue on the screen.
Very good observation.
I know.
I can see that color pattern now.
Yeah, well, I kind of tend to do that. Very good observations. Let's not get Tanveer in the center.
Yeah, I know. I completely discolor the picture.
Yeah, disrupt the scene. But Yatin, to you first. What are you picking up from your sources?
Neeraj, yesterday we were talking about JP Associates, in the dealers, and today the kind of move that we have seen. Clearly the market is speculating that the Ultratech deal proceeds will anytime come to JP Associates. So, a lot of build up there in the FNO segment as well. But talking about other ideas, Wokhard, that is one stock wherein dealers are recommending a BTST based on FNO trends. Since the last 2 days, we are seeing some price volume action in Wokhard, especially after the Cadila plant was cleared with no observations in the 483. So in general, a lot of buying seeing in pharma stocks after yesterday's surge in Cadila. Sun Pharma is up 3.5%, Cadila up, Dr. Reddy's was up in trade. And apart from that, in the mid-cap space, do watch out for Vivimed Labs as well as KEI Industries. Both of these mid-caps wherein dealers are expecting a short-term 10 to 15% upside. In fact, in KEI Industries, we had a big block deal in the BSC as well as in the NSC early trade. So that is one stock which is there on the HNI radar.
Mauresh tracks KEI very well. We'll talk about KEI with Mauresh Joshi. But before that, Darshan, what are you picking up from your sources?
See, one of the stocks that is buzzing in today's trade is IFB Industries. It's up almost 10% the last time I saw. Dealers indicate a large foreign fund is the active buyer in this counter. It's a large fund which has substantial holdings in some of the high consumption names, FMCG names, consumer discretionary names, very reputed FII. So probably expect more action in IFB. So just keep this stock in your radar, is something that dealers are talking about. Sun Pharma, phenomenal move coming in over the past few days. Dealers indicate that a large domestic family run fund is accumulating the counter. And finally, Radico Khaitan is something that we're hearing of a possible deal that could be buzzing, a possible corporate announcement that could come in very soon. It's down in trade, but there is something cooking as per dealers.
Right, Darshan, Yatin, thanks very much for wrapping up the dealer talk this afternoon. Let's quickly get in strategies before close. I'll start with you, Siddharth. What is it that you'd recommend?
So the top trade remains the pharma stock Sun Pharma. I'm very positive on it, the way stock is closing on the weekly chart as well as daily, and now we are seeing some activity on the open interest front also, which was not the case in previous move. So go long here. I'm expecting it to move towards 720 plus levels. So that's the trade.
Wow, and I think Siddharth has been consistently bullish on this one. CK, your top closing strategy?
I would do a BTST in United Spirits at the current price. A revival of momentum which should spill over into tomorrow. 23.55.60 current price. Expecting 2400 tomorrow. So BTST long On United Spirits, 30 rupees as a stop loss.
Right, Ashish, come to you. What is it that you'd recommend?
So apart from the stocks which we have discussed, I think GAIL, as we have already mentioned, that this stock has a potential to test 530. I think as a short-term trading bet, one can initiate a long in GAIL at current levels, keep a stop below 504 for an upside target of 530 levels.
Mauresh, dealers are talking about KI Industries and a possible short-term up move. I know you've been recommending this fundamentally. Is there a chance of a short-term up move here?
Again, Neeraj, so I think I like the stock from a medium to long term perspective, and the logic is pretty clear. The kind of numbers that they've posted in the quarter gone by extremely robust, and the management is very, very hopeful of repeating these numbers. Secondly, I think even within their business mix itself, they're planning to increase the component of the retail mix, which has larger margins in the overall pie. So if that happens over the next 2 years, as the distribution network starts increasing from 900 distributors to 1500, that creates a huge impetus in terms of how the margins will pan out. The kind of debt that they've gone on the books, we are very, very hopeful that over the next 2 to 3 years, the long-term debt, the term debt of around 190 to 200 crores shall actually be brought down to negligible levels over the next 2 to 3 years, and that will give us spurt to the earnings growth. And the best part about their earnings growth so far, I think the entire EPS for the entire FY16 was close to 8.1 rupees. 9 months FY17, they've already done 8.9. So the growth exists on their balance sheet. We believe that the earnings for the year ending, including Q4, should be close to 11.8, 11.9, and further expand to 14.5, 15. So I think we remain very, very optimistic from a medium to long term perspective on the stock.
Just before we start wrapping up the market, just want to mark 2 or 3 names that are suddenly catching my eye. One of them is HBL Power. I think some good moves in the session today. There's a stock called Tarmat Limited, which is up some 11% and 15%, excuse me. 50.5 is where that one is trading at. So good going for that one. Yeah, that's the one. 17% now. And after days and days of losses, Dishman Pharma is down about is up about 7%. So good going for that one as well. Satin Credit Care at 441 has seen a phenomenal reversal, and Just Dial continues to rise and shine. 461. CK, maybe a 30-second answer, CK, because we really have to wrap up. But you went long on Just Dial, if I'm not wrong, last week. Carrying home the longs if you still have them?
Well, the patent target was at about 460. It has been reached, but it is closing above that. So I think we'll hold on for the next target, which is between 470 to 477.
Okay, gentlemen, let's start wrapping up the market. Holding well for the index above 8800 for the broader markets, also looking good. Drill it down to specifics. HDFC Bank 4% higher, Sun Pharma 3.5% higher, GAIL, ICICI Bank, BPCL holding out, Cipla doing well, Aurobindo, Grasim, Tata Power, all of them performing as well. Lupin, Tata Motors. There's more green on the screen, and of course HDFC Bank has come off from the day's highs, so keeping its margin in place, but even so, becoming a bit more measured from the kind of exaggerated move it had in the first half of trade. Among losers, Bharti Infratel is weaker, Hindalco is weaker, Idea, TCS, Eicher Motors, Hero MotoCorp. In fact, the entire IT basket has given way today.
Yeah, it has. I'm just looking at the broader end of the spectrum. May not necessarily the small caps, but if I just look at the Nifty 100, it's not a bad trading screen. There's strength in Reliance Capital up 5.5, strength in Petronet LNG, which is not done too badly. Actually, I'll bring up a Chennai Petro, not a part of the Nifty 100, but Chennai Petro has done well, which brings me to MRPL, which is not done too badly either. HPCL about 2.5% uptick. So not bad going there. Titan and UPL also have some gains to themselves. So good going. Any losers there? No, all nifty names. Bharat Forge, maybe a small bit of a downtick today, or maybe some profit booking coming in. It's had a really good rally, so maybe just a bit of a breather for Bharat Forge. No way to say that the trend is turning for this one. A couple of noticeable other losers. Imfa, I think the management commentary was superb, but it's run up so much that there is a bit of a cooling off that is happening in Indian metal ferroalloys. At 668, it's down about 3.5%. Is this one, that is Imfa. And Sun TV has cooled off a bit, 2.5% off in the session today. Was done well, the JP Trio, Infratech, Associates, JP Power, all three strong moves. Greaves Cotton 7%, Tishman Pharma 6%, Diwan Housing Finance and Relcap 5% apiece. Cadila ending at the high point of the day, 5% at 451. GNFC some more gains now, 5% up at 273. Bombay Burma 634, not bad going. First Source has some gains to itself at 45. I think that's doing okay on fairly decent volumes, I might add, is First Source. So do watch out for that one as well. Some small caps or micro caps as the case may be. Actually, NBCC is no way a micro cap or a small cap. I think it's the top loser on the NSC. NBCC is the top loser today on the National Stock Exchange. VMart 6% down, not the best move today. And Godrej has about a 4.5% uptick. Actually, one interesting name is Mahanagar Gas, which is also down about 4.5%. Gainers, and a bunch of them. There is a Banaras Beads, no idea what the company does, but it's up 20%. Tarmat 16%, again no clue at all, but up 16%. HBL Power up about 12.5%. Darshan was speaking about IFB Industries, that's up about 12%, not bad going. And Venus Remedies about 8% higher. I think that's done okay for itself. And yeah, I spoke about Greaves Cotton. Hinduja Global 6.5 has done okay. Satin Credit Care up 5.5% as well. Has the circuit limits changed for Satin? Because I think it usually had a 5% circuit. I think it's 5.5 now. I think the circuit limits have been revised to maybe 20%. And Satin Credit Care has some gains to itself too. Anyways, final thoughts from all our experts. Siddharth Bhamre, to you first, a very important question. Do you track Banaras Beads?
I don't have words. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's just amazing, Siddharth. Some of these days I get stocks which just are eye-popping in terms of their moves. Banaras Beads, never heard of that company, but it's top of the pile on the National Stock Exchange on 6 lakh shares traded. So yeah, that's an interesting move. Anyways, so that the index has an interesting move as well today.
Did you ask Dr. Narayan that?
Sorry?
Why aren't you asking Dr. Narayan that?
Out of respect. Siddharth is more like a buddy. Dr. Narayan is a bit of a father figure.
What about Ashish?
Ashish, maybe I could have tried that, or maybe Mauresh as well I could have tried. But anyways, let's talk about the markets and more serious questions. Siddharth, not a bad close. You've been bullish since yesterday. It's turning out as per script. What next?
I think we should continue to remain bullish. It would be important to see that what FIs have done today in index futures, because as I was mentioning earlier, Neeraj, that these mathematics related to HDFC Bank and its weightage in indices, what we did today, I think these guys smartly has done this, since beginning of the week and have taken position in index futures. And that's the reason we're talking that index futures long positions were getting formed despite market not going anywhere. Now, if they've squared off those long positions, that means then again we are into that consolidation zone. And if that is not the case, and I believe that is not the case, otherwise we would have seen, substantial pressure in market, which was not the case. So I would suggest continue to hold on to long position unless and until data state otherwise, and my screen reading says that data should continue to remain positive.
Right. Okay. Thanks a lot for that perspective. We're very inquisitive about the mood and the move rather on Banaras Beads, which we will kind of analyze in a bit. But before that, get Ashish to give his perspective at close.
Yep. So I
on
think
the market.
Yep. See, I think Nifty is closing about 8800 mark, and which is a good sign, because consistently in last 7-8 trading sessions we saw a very range bound move, and post that in last 2 trading sessions we have observed a good amount of uptick in the market. I think now 8700 becomes a very, very important support zone. Until it is not broken, we expect index to test 8950, 9000 kind of levels, and for this move to catch in, I think a lot of stocks and sectors are participating. So apart from banking names, I think a lot of oil and gas stocks are showing a lot of strength, and there I think a lot of strength can be seen. So stocks like Power Grid, REC, NTPC, even for that matter Reliance is showing some signs of strength. So overall this will contribute to the rally. So we think that buy and dip should be the strategy, and 8700 should be kept stop loss for going long in short term.
Okay. Dr. Narayan, your thoughts?
Well, I think the upside breakout is even now a little bit elusive, even though we traded up past this 8850 levels several times during the day. And the Bank Nifty finishing about 20,500. So taken collectively, these two items I think should prompt us to give the benefit of doubt towards the bulls, and that the market would probably continue higher from where it has left off today. And I think a lot of stocks in support, HDFC Bank peeling off, but the indices remaining where they were or holding on to those high levels is indeed a signal that most stocks have participated. And perhaps there is still a sense of skepticism or a disbelief, or perhaps an unwillingness to go out there and create aggressive longs as yet. But that same spirit is actually visible in the small cap, mid cap area, because there lots of stocks are moving up. You're all discussing this Banaras beads as being one of the big moves of the day. It's interesting that Banaras beads has been a company which has been around for more than about 4-5 decades, and it's a big export house, and it exports 80% of, it's the largest exporter of glass beads from India. So it's not a company to trifle with. It's been around in the market for long. If you look at the charts, fairly decent build up, etc. I don't know about the financials part, but then from the charts it appears that it's on the mend. So why I'm mentioning this is that people are quite willing to chance their arms with unknown items like Banaras beads, but they are strangely quite reluctant to take up positions and create them and hold them in the large caps. So there is something out of sync here. I don't know what it is right now, but then we have to follow the trends, and the trends say go with the long side, be long in this market, and use dips to buy. So I think that is what we'll follow ahead.
Wise words of wisdom, Dr. Narayan.
Wow, I never imagined that.
You should have gone to Dr. Narayan.
I should have tried that. Next time, I learned my lesson today. Anyways, all three of you, thank you so much for joining and giving us those technical perspectives. Mauresh, before we let you go, I'm guessing you don't have a thought on Banaras beads, but I thought we haven't discussed all the ideas that you had. There was Navkar Corporation, if I'm not wrong, that is something that you're telling your clients to buy as well.
Yes, I think again the stock has underperformed, Neeraj, because the numbers probably are not coming through. But again, I think one of the 3 CFS stations servicing JNPT, and as the rail connectivity starts getting operationally fully over the next quarter and 2, I think the volumes itself will start peaking for themselves, and that will reflect in the financials. So again, I think we are expecting earnings recovery to come through the next 2 to 3 quarters, and there can be a sharp recovery at that one. Secondly, I think in terms of the export volumes, WAPI almost accounts for almost 27% of the total EXIM trade at JNPT. The exports that come through WAPI, which are untapped or go directly by road, of almost 170,000 TEUs, I think they can have a huge amount of scope for a company like Navkar with rail connectivity. Second, I think the South Gujarat volumes, which are the bulkier cargo volumes, they have not been catered to so far. So once they start happening at their logistics parks, and again getting assembled there and probably exported from there itself, that can have a huge say in terms of volume. So it's a question about gaining market share, of gaining volume share, which I'm very confident should start happening over the next 2 to 3 quarters, and the earnings recovery will be equally sharp in FY18. Again, valuation wise not too expensive, so any decline onto the stock becomes a very good buying opportunity for long-term investors.
Alright, Mauresh, thanks very much for your time as well, and your insights as well as your investment ideas. Appreciate your views as always. We'll take a break then. When we come back, get you some post-market analysis.